PMs, and we've got Dan O'Dowd here to talk about a little bit about everything, including the Miami Marlins have a new manager in Skip Schumacher. What kind of situation is Skip walking himself into right now?
Challenging one, wouldn't you say?
Yeah.
I mean, very, very challenging. I mean, it's hard to time a rebuild. Obviously, we love their young starting pitching. Still feel their bullpen needs work, but they've got enough talent to be able to address both of them from a starting standpoint. But, boy, they need to figure out a way to score some runs, D-Row.
I think for me, I actually texted Skip and congratulated him last night, and he wrote back, D-Row, thanks for reaching out. I couldn't be more fired up. So wanting this opportunity, I think he comes from obviously being born and raised in the St. Louis Cardinals organization, the expectations of winning and how to go about that, right? He's going to bring, not that Don Mattingly didn't, but he's going to stress fundamentals. He's going to stress team chemistry and doing things the right way, but you got to find a way to score some runs. I'm just super excited for him. I think he's going to connect.
I think the team chemistry.
With the young players.
I don't know him that well.
Skip's a stud.
Stud, huh?
Stud.
So you love the hire for them?
Everybody's favorite teammate, honestly, and willing to fight. Like, this wasn't a guy. He knew. I always say this. Do you know where you stand every day on the team, and how do you approach the day?
So how is he going to balance today's game? How is his mindset as relates to some of the fundamental beliefs of being raised in the George Kissel system in St. Louis, plus the new information analytically? Does he marry that well?
I think he will marry that well. I really do. I think he went over to San Diego.
Yeah.
Got exposed to some different things.
Exposed to a couple different things, then came back. I got to believe Ali Marmol leaned on him heavily.
Sure.
He's just a well-respected guy. He was just a great teammate, a guy that knew what was expected. He's going to demand that they play a certain brand of baseball.
That's great.
Well, I'm fired up for him. But you got to score runs. What did Jim Leland always say? You're only as good as the players you have.
Yeah. Well, they need guys to bounce back, guys that struggled a year ago, and they need to spend some money because they have some young players that just aren't ready to come yet.
And he's got a tat sleeve. He will be the only manager that has a full tat sleeve, which means he's dangerous.
That's right. You better be careful. Speaking of spending money, there are reports that the Dodgers are very interested in the pursuit of Aaron Judge. Also, too, the San Francisco Giants have reportedly said, we're not going to be underbid when it comes to Aaron Judge. So let's talk about the Dodgers first. Dan, how would they even make that work?
Honestly, they're going to have some payroll flexibility. They have a lot of players coming off their payroll. They had one of the highest payrolls in the game a year ago, but I think they'll have like $100 million to work with, depending upon what they do with Cody Bellinger and some other decisions they have to make.
I would think he's gone.
Cody Bellinger?
I'll tell you what, though, D-Row.
You're going to pay him?
Telling
what
you.
What are you going to pay him?
Well, I'm not sure I'd pay him that, but I'm not sure he's foolish enough to think he'd get that in the market, though, either. But there's a dearth of center fielders in our industry right now. That's a one position that just doesn't have a lot of depth or talent to it. So, had a really interesting decision. So, guys, the struggle with the Dodger fit, besides how many high-priced players can you possibly have on one team, is that you're taking an elite, maybe the best in the game, you could argue, right fielder all around, and then moving him to a different position to create that fit. I'm just not sure. But I would get involved just because if the Giants aren't going to get outbid, I'd make it be as expensive as I possibly could for them.
I guess the potential there is Mookie Betts could move to second base.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
Well, Robert, I mean, he's going to be playing for Team USA in the World Baseball Classic, and he has made it known that he wants to play
second
base.
Well, he was a very good second baseman coming up.
I mean, look at him. He doesn't even.
He just moved to outfield because of Pedroia.
Wow. It's interesting to me. I do see that potentially happening, him playing second base if they go out and sign an Aaron Judge, which makes a ton of sense. Obviously, they have the money to get it done. And then I'm not so sure. You had Corey Seager. You replaced him with Trea Turner. Is Gavin Lux ready to take that next step? Because it's superstar. I think an interesting name to watch out, if they're not willing to back up the Brinks Truck for Trea Turner, is a guy like Dansby Swanson.
I do. I think Dansby could end up wearing the Dodgers.
It seems like it would fit.
I want you guys to talk about the Giants' fit, because you mentioned the Dodgers have payroll flexibility. The Giants have a whole lot of payroll flexibility.
You look at their payroll from a year ago.
They have a lot of money to spend. And pull up the graphic of who the Yankees open up 2023 with. Yeah, the San Francisco Giants come to Yankee Stadium to open up 2023. And can you imagine big number 99 wearing the orange and black of the San Francisco?
Well, they had the 16th highest payroll in the game, so they've got a ton of payroll flexibility moving forward. It just gets into is this how they're going to roster build now? Because they've showed no inclination of doing this prior to this year. But, I mean, they didn't have a good year, and they need to score runs, and their outfield's been a question mark.
They need a signature player, too.
They do. I do believe he's going to be – they're going to offer him more money than anybody else. I do. I believe that.
And he's obviously got strong ties to the area.
Which I think is so overblown, the whole he wants to come home and play.
Yeah, no, I don't think it's that.
I didn't. Not that I had those opportunities.
I think it's going to be, does he want to take the most money, or does he want to play in a place where he's – going to go down as one of the best players in their history in the Yankees?
I think just human nature, you don't bet on yourself, have that kind of season, and then just say, okay, I'll take a hometown discount.
No.
And also, I wonder the foolish, arrogant decision before the season to announce what they offered Judge, to put the figures out publicly. Yeah. How that's going to affect.
I think the other thing is, Dan obviously has dealt with this. When you start to go to free agency, and I can only speak from my experiences as a way smaller scale, when you start to call your agent on a nightly basis and he's like, hey, the Rockies called or the Giants called, you never imagine yourself playing somewhere else. And then you start to hear other teams, and then you're like, ooh, that's interesting. Ooh, that's interesting. So that they've allowed Judge to
like to be courted. No
get
doubt.
to that point.
Yeah.
Where it's going to get interesting.
Yeah, you had brought up what's the percent. I agreed with you. I think it's 50-50 that he's back in New York.
You think it's that?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah.
I think he's going to get blown away by some of his offers.
If the Yankees don't re-sign Aaron Judge, then they should just go, and people are going to get mad at me, they should just go full
rebuild?
You're not going to rebuild, but you have to think completely differently.
Yeah. Because there aren't any options on this year's market offensively to replace him.
I'm sure there's a lot of other 6'7" dudes that hit 62 homers just, laying around. They can find someone else.
But do you think that he's going to post?
I don't know. I mean, he's posted the last 2 years. He's been very durable the last 2 years.
That's what you worry about, right? You're going to back it up 8 years at $40 million a year, and then he's only going to play 90 games?
Yeah, it's a system.
He's going to be 31 years old.
You get paid for what you did in the past, but not what you're going to get paid what you do in the future. So that's all predictive analysis, and that's concerning.
Gamble.
Yep.
Whew. That's high-stakes gambling for sure, no doubt. All right, when we come back, we're going to talk about the San Diego Padres. They too have some
29 to National League champions, and he said, "I feel like too much is going right, but you know what? He deserves it." Tell us about his journey.
Lauren, good morning. It's been an extraordinary journey for Rob Thompson and his family. The native of Sarnia, Ontario, lives now in the great city of Stratford, Ontario. And what a journey for him. He actually played for Canada at the Olympics back in the 1980s. And all these years as a coach, as D-Roll referenced, someone who, as he told Todd's Lucky for a great story on MLB.com, would, up until May and June of this year, walk around Philadelphia from his apartment, and no one really would stop him and talk baseball with him. But certainly, Lauren, it is very much a different story now. I think that the great fashion statement in Philadelphia now, those I Ride with Philly Rob T-shirts that we are seeing all over the field, and what a great photo of the celebration, all the significant others of the Phillies players all wearing that same T-shirt. And I think, Lauren, Rob Thompson has been someone who always has connected so well with players, knows the game exceptionally well, and has never made it about himself. He's always been there to help others out in their journey. And you could just tell the confidence, the easygoing confidence that his team is playing with. I think it's similar in some ways to the way that the Astros play that same way with Dusty Baker. Two different managers, different backgrounds, but they've gotten their players to a very similar place. And I think when you consider what Rob Thompson has done as a leader for Canadian baseball and so many in the great baseball nation of Canada who are looking up to Rob Thompson today, it's a point of pride for the Phillies and their skipper.
They let their guys shine. That's first and foremost. Nice to see good things happen to unexpected and good people. I know you, JP. I know you, and you love a good hometown story. And there is one with Chas McCormick. Tell me more.
From Westchester, Pennsylvania, Lauren, the Pennsylvania native is going to be playing against the Phillies here in the World Series. And Chas McCormick was among the candidates I thought, to be an MVP of the LCS. Obviously, Jeremy Pena deservedly gets the award, but Chas McCormick had a pretty good case as well, considering the home runs that he hit to right field. And for him to be able to play in this World Series now so close to home, grew up as a Philadelphia sports fan. I saw his brother Brian there with Brian's son watching Chas play, watching Uncle Chas play during the ALCS there in New York City, but even closer to home now for him. And Lauren, I believe this story has to be celebrated here. Chas McCormick, a 21st round draft pick, Millersville University in Pennsylvania, Division II school. So Chas McCormick drafted in a round that no longer exists in the Major League Baseball draft, following his brother to the great Division II university there in Millersville. And for him to be able to have this spotlight now, I think is a great story for all of us to say you don't have to be a first-round pick, the bonus baby, to be able to come on and have this great star turn in the postseason. And I think, to D-Rose' point earlier, you think about the big story. You've got Bryce Harper, #1 overall, all the attention, and it's great. He has been the story of the Phillies in this postseason, and deservedly so. He is making a name for himself, a Philadelphia icon, but this is also a time of year for the 21st round pick in Chas McCormick playing for the Astros against his hometown team. There is room in this great postseason, in this World Series, for both Harper and McCormick, and I cannot wait.
And a round that no longer exists, that hit me. Got to believe in yourself, right, JP, or nobody will. Thrilled, by the way, for Skip Schumacher, announced yesterday as the Marlins' new manager. D-Rose sings his praises. I feel like in Texas, with their managerial search, they kind of knew. They kind of had their guys. The same in South Florida?
You know, Lauren, that's a great question, because I think that the Marlins certainly looked at a lot of different candidates and found the right one in Skip Schumacher. He was not someone that came in with necessarily a ton of history with the organization. Obviously, his career, you would say, has been split among the Cardinals, Padres. He played for the Dodgers. But his credentials are impeccable, as D-Row knows, an extraordinary teammate who is really beloved in so many different ways. And he's been a great baseball guy who's been schooled certainly in the way of playing for Tony La Russa all those years, but then also, I think, can embrace the analytics as well. He is someone that I've really, really respected over my years of covering him as a player and then getting to know him as a coach as well. So I think the Marlins made an absolute home run hire with Skip Schumacher. They looked around. They looked at Matt Quatraro. Of course, Joe Espada interviewed there as well. But I think Skip Schumacher, with his credentials, Lauren, all that he's done and helping certainly teams get to the playoffs here in recent years as a coach, I think they could not have found a better candidate than Skip Schumacher.
Every St. Louis bench coach goes on to manage. We will see what the next vacancy brings. So what does that mean in Chicago? Because we heard, JP, some of the same names for the managerial search on the South Side.
Yes, Lauren, I think that to me it's now two big searches still out there, the White Sox and the Royals. And the White Sox, as we mentioned, Joe Espada could be a fit there. Of course, the Astros bench coach reports that Ozzie Guillen could be considered there yet again on the South Side. We'll see what happens with him. I also think the way this all now relates to the Royals is important too. I was just given information this morning to confirm Clayton McCullough, the Dodgers first base coach, was interviewed there in Kansas City, among the finalists there in Kansas City. Also, the internal candidates, Pedro Grifol, Vance Wilson, Scott Thorman, they've all interviewed there with the Royals. I do think Grifol could be a candidate with the White Sox too. And a final managerial note to kind of bring it all into focus here. We don't know if Dusty Baker is going to return next year or not, depending on the result of the World Series. Obviously, he's done so much, and it's really plenty to say this should be his decision. But he was notably asked during the ALCS what he plans to do. And he said, I've got an idea, but I'm not ready to share it yet. So we don't know as the World Series begins if Dusty intends to, if they win it all, win it, walk away, retire. Who knows what that means for Espada? Would he then step up and be the Astros manager? So many different possibilities there, Lauren, for us to think about. But let's not forget that Dusty Baker has that option of the great walk-off win of all walk-off wins, depending on how things play out here for the Astros.